and welcome to Autism in Conversation with Auticon, a new podcast from Auticon, a global IT consultancy whose consultants are all autistic. This brand new series is designed to help raise awareness of what it means to be autistic through fascinating conversations. Hosted by me, Carrie Grant, each episode will feature interviews with leading voices on autism, including figures from the business world, autistic social media influencers, and autism academics alike. We'll be talking about the many benefits of hiring neurodiverse talent, through to some of the more common challenges faced by autistic adults navigating the workplace. All my 4 children are neurodivergent, so this is a subject very close to my heart. I'm really looking forward to facilitating some great conversations about autism and hopefully learning some new things along the way. I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to this very special edition of Autism in Conversation with Auticon. In this episode, we'll be celebrating all things autism with a particular focus on raising awareness. There are so many days and weeks and months that we're meant to celebrate autism. So this is that episode. And as ever, we'll be having some great conversations about autism, discussing what it means to have a diagnosis and how that works, particularly in reference to the workplace. It's going to be jam-packed with lots to cover, from autism myth busting. I'd like to do a bit of that, so have a think about that to my guests. And also the best things about being autistic. What are the best things? Through to hopes for the future. My guests today are Tylen Grant, who is an Hollyoaks actor and happens to be one of my children. Hello, welcome. It's lovely that you've said yes to me. We have Mona Shah from the chocolate company Harry Specters, and also Steve Hill from Auticon UK. He's the commercial director there. Welcome to everybody. So I always find, I'm going to ask the first question. I always find this quite difficult to answer when I say, oh, I've got autistic children, and people say, so what is autism? And it feels like I'm answering a massive, massive question. But I thought I would challenge you guys with that. And starting with Ty. Ty, if I was to ask you that question, what is autism? What does that mean to you?
I guess I find it kind of challenging to define autism, because there's so many different experiences that people have, and something that I might experience may not align with what someone else deals with and stuff like that. And it's very easy to list a bunch of traits or anything like that, but it's quite a unique thing. So also for me, when people say what is it like being autistic, I don't have a reference. I've never known anything else. It's just how my brain works. So it's hard to kind of always explain, because I only really know what I have experienced. And
I would say obviously I'm your mum, so I can say this, but you are someone who is, when you're into something, and I mean this in the best way, your focus is absolutely amazing. And you can therefore have these prolonged periods where you're concentrating on something that, like that might be dancing or acting or music. You're really able to do that. You're incredibly creative and very, very focused.
Yeah, I get quite a lot of I don't even like to say special interests, because sometimes it feels a bit condescending. I guess that my hyperfixations, honestly, when I really like something, sometimes it can even get to the point where I frustrate myself with how much I am enjoying it. Especially when it's something that's quite a niche interest, and people haven't seen this movie, or don't know about what I'm interested in. Sometimes I'm like, oh my god, I'm a unique thought, please. All I can think about is this. Yeah, I definitely have hyperfixations, and when I'm passionate about something, I'm all in.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me move over to Mona. Now, you have an autistic son. You're running a chocolate company. Mm-hmm. And you employ autistic people. As a neurotypical person living within an autistic community, if you like, what would be your impression of autism?
Oh my God, I love it. Basically, because I mean, I've worked with over almost 500 different autistic people over the last almost 10 years now. And it's amazing how everyone is so different and so interesting. And you have to keep changing all those impressions and all those ideas and all those thoughts that have been, those myths basically, that have been hammered into you every time someone talks about autism. You're like, no, hang on, that's not true. I mean, initially it was just our son, and you're like, okay, he's not structured. He's okay with his routine being disrupted. His focus is just all over the place. But then I was like, okay, and then you meet one person and they're like, okay, he's very structured. And then you meet another and he's like, quite,
Yeah.
So it's just like constantly changing the way you act with different employees or different students on work experience. And it's quite challenging because you're running a business and making sure that all of your employees are feeling safe and supported and just being able to give their best. And like I said earlier, that, basically what we need to do is concentrate on the strengths. And that's exactly what we do. So everyone has their own strengths. And that's the only thing we work on. We don't really care about what they can't do, because there's loads of stuff that I can't do. But so I just do what I do best. And I think that's what you need to focus on.
Mona, I love this idea that, you meet, people often use this phrase that if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And I love this concept that you've just come straight in with, 500 people, but they are, from what you're saying, all very different. Steve, you're working into the work marketplace. What's your impression when you are that go-to person? You're the go-between, aren't you, between our autism community and between companies? What impression do you have standing in that middle ground?
So, I mean, firstly, just to add to Mona's description, I mean, we came up with, being in the tech sector, we came up with something which maybe isn't generically right, but we tend to refer to autism as the fact it's not a processing error, it's a different operating system, which I think in the tech sector that resonates.
Yes.
And it's quite a positive way of sort of describing and in a way celebrating autism.
I love this idea of celebrating. It has to be celebrating all the way, not just tolerating or accepting, but actually positively celebrating people. Now, there's another question I've got here. I don't know how easy or difficult this is to answer, but what would you say is the biggest myth around autism? So something that you think, oh, that's just so not who autistic people are. I can see Thailand thinking intently there, so I'm going to give you a few more seconds to think. I'll go to Mona first on this one.
I mean, the one thing that I would definitely say of course, this is my personal experience. It doesn't have to be for everybody, but most of the time they say they're very rigid, and it's very difficult for them to move out of their comfort zone. And that is the one myth that I really need to bust right now. They are the most flexible people I know. It's just how you make them flexible. That's it. It's not like they're not willing to learn or willing to change. They are the most easy people to work with, honestly. I have more issues with the neurotypical people that I have, major HR issues there with my amazing autistic staff. Nothing, no problem at all.
Mona, I feel like you've just exploded something in my head, which is one of my big issues, actually, which I don't think is a myth, but is an issue for me, which is why is it that we expect our autistic community to have to move and shake in a world that is so unbelievably rigid? To me, it's the outside world that is causing that rigidity. There's nothing to do with the child. I'm talking about my kids in school, but just school is so rigid. It's ridiculous. And then we have the cheek to call autistic people rigid. You're like, hang on a minute, It's your system that is totally rigid.
And there are times when I look at my son and I'm really envious. I'm like, I wish I could be like him. Just so relaxed and so comfortable in his skin. It's amazing, and we really want to be like that, just be comfortable and not be consciously trying to do stuff that's the accepted norm. You can't be yourself as a I can't be myself. I have to be what I'm expected to be. But when I look at my staff and I think, I mean, they're just so comfortable and they're just so happy. They're really happy people. Everybody I've come across are happy individuals. And you just think, no, I wish I was like that. I could just be happy in who I am, what I can do, and that's it.
I mean, we could get on to the whole subject of masking there. It sounds like your staff are not feeling the need to mask, so can show up as themselves, which is something that's vitally important. Let's go back to Thailand on that then. So what would you say is something that you're like, oh, that's so not true about me or so not true about us?
It's so many things are coming to mind. There's just like I've had like so many different like misconceptions and myths that it's hard to like think of one thing because there's just a lot. But I kind of was thinking something very similar to what Mona was saying, in the way where it's just like we're not. I think that my biggest issue is actually other people's understanding of me, not my understanding. Like it's only difficult, and you only have to like make an effort or whatever, because the world has been molded in that way that benefits kind of exclusively neurotypical people. So I think that that's I think the biggest misconception. I don't know, that probably that we're not like capable of doing things that people that neurotypical people can do. Just like we can't do it. Or like when I tell people I'm autistic, they're like, you don't look autistic. And I'm just like, well, what does that look like? You know, I think that's the biggest misconception, is like just people's like miseducation and like lack of understanding and education and exposure makes people assume that like autistic people are meant to look a certain way or behave outwardly in a very specific way. So I feel like that's the biggest misconception.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the number of times, Ty, you and I have been somewhere official and someone has looked at me and talked to me instead of talking to you, or just looked at me and said, oh, they talk. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
But the crazy part is like, I think that being like brown and like black and autistic and even trans or whatever like adds a whole nother layer sometimes, because it's like there's so many intersections, and it's like, okay, well, you're probably not looking at me for multiple different reasons. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And for you, Steve, the biggest myths that you have, I'm sure you could comment on what's already been said, but myths out there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not such a myth, but an issue, definitely. And sort of leading on from what Tyler was saying, is fear. Because with that kind of lack of understanding and education comes fear, because it's fear of the unknown. And naturally, people are cautious and they don't want to take that next step. So
they don't make eye contact.
Yeah.
It's their problem. Okay, so the next...
I agree. So if I could just add something to that, to what Steve just said, I find that a lot, because when we have, like, even if our investors are coming or you know, if we have visits to the factory and they know it's their autistic people working there, it's just like, how do we act? They say, well, act like you normally act. You don't have to do anything different. And then there are like certain companies who come to us and say, you know, we would like to have more of a neurodiverse workplace. What should we do? And I said, and they're always like worried about HR issues and saying the wrong thing. And I said, the more you think this is like a problem, the more it will become a problem. If you just treat them like you treat any other employee who comes in, it should be fine. If you think you have to make major adjustments, it'll stop you from hiring people. I think you should just get somebody in and then see, because it's very, very minor what you need to do to make them feel comfortable. They're not precious that way at all. I think more, the neurotypical people are more precious and more demanding than my autistic staff. So, if you just think that it's going to be a problem, it's going to stop you from hiring. So don't do that.
Tylen, you got
Yeah.
something to say there?
Yeah, no, I was just saying the fact that a lot of neurotypical people feel like they don't know how to act when they meet someone that's different, when they meet an autistic person, just shows like how scripted and how like forced this like neurotypical way of being is. Like it's also like when I speak to people that aren't autistic, sometimes it feels like such a script. It's like, oh hi, how are you? I'm good, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Like, and then sometimes I panic because I'm like, oh no, I've run out of lines. Like, what do we say now? Like sometimes when we go off script, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, so it just shows how it's like they're masking in a different way, it's weird. And I don't think autistic people already have that.
That's so interesting. Tylen, I'm just thinking about coming from, I want to talk a little bit about those younger years because Mona's got a child who is still in education, or a young adult, I should say, it's still in education, coming out of education towards work. For you, I'm just thinking about all the gazillions of adjustments that we were fighting for you in school that never got ever really made or helped with. And then you got your job at Hollyoaks and everything changed. What did Hollyoaks do that was different? It felt like you needed a ton less adjustments.
I think that it made me realize that I wasn't the issue and that I wasn't a burden when I joined Hollyoaks, because it was like they were so open to just like making adjustments. And I think that with like school, a lot of the time it can be like, well, if we do this for you, then we have to do it for everyone. And that kind of like attitude is honestly like more damaging than it is helpful, where it's like, well, we have to see everyone is the same. Like, no, everyone has their own special needs, everyone has their own like differences. And I think that like Hollyoaks really understood that, and for the first time I actually realized that I wasn't the problem. It was other people's like reluctancy to understand and help me, and they just made it so easy. And I was like, wow, it is a gift. I can see that actually I'm bringing something and I'm not bringing people down.
That must have been such a massive change to go from pretty much your whole school career feeling like
Yeah.
you're a burden to suddenly
Especially
going
when
to
there's a
work and you're
whole
not.
like thing of, if you think this is bad, just wait till you go on that leave and go to the outside world. It's even worse out there, which is just not true in my experience. So it was like a big surprise. I was like, whoa, this is the outside world? I prefer it a lot more.
Yeah. What difference did that make to you and your feelings about yourself?
uh, it made me feel like that what I like have in me, like who I am, isn't holding me back from what I want to do. And it's not something that I have to like hide also, because I remember when I first joined, they asked, is there anything that would cause you to feel overwhelmed, or are there certain things that you struggle with? And I was kind of reluctant to be completely honest, because I thought that if I actually said what I struggled with, they would think that it was too difficult, or, I was just not like neurotypical enough for them. So I actually was just in a space where I was seen for the first time and accepted, and that made me like realize a lot about like myself and also what I'm capable of. Because like I was like out there like working and doing things that I never thought I could do, because I was in a space where people were actually believing in me. And I think that made me believe in myself. because I found like that space,
That's
that
beautiful.
safe space.
Can I also ask you to just tell us, really, from your first interaction with Hollyoaks at the auditions, what did they do that was even different at the interviewing stage?
At the interviewing stage, it wasn't like any audition that I had ever previously done before, because they had actually given everyone who was auditioning an email or like a PowerPoint kind of thing where it would actually tell you who you were going to meet on the day, and what everyone's jobs were and what everyone's names were, what the auditioning process was going to be. Kind of just walks you through it. And for someone that like really like needs that like structure and like um and I like to know what I'm getting into, it was super helpful for me and eased my anxiety a lot. And I can imagine it helped a lot of other people. It was really nice. It was like super considerate. And I think that a lot of people should be taking notes from that, because it made me feel like a lot less anxious, because I knew what it was going to be like. And they were just very vocal about it.
We talk a lot about the relationship between anxiety and what people can tolerate when they're feeling really anxious. And then if we put demands on top of that and we tell people you've got to learn a load of script, they're never going to be able to do that very well if we're allowing their anxiety to be really high. So if we can lower that anxiety and take away the things that are the predictables, the things that, what does the building look like? What does the person on the front desk look like? That takes the anxiety down. Toleration levels go up, demands can then be put on. That's what we really noticed for you, Ty, is that within 6 months of starting on Hollyoaks, you were doing things that we were just like applauding every day of the week, going, how are they managing to do this? This is amazing, really amazing. Steve, how do we get to that point? You know, Ty's experience there with Hollyoaks, and also just hearing Mona speak about her attitude towards her staff is so good. They're really good practices, aren't they? How do we get people to grow? It's not rocket science, is it?
It's not. I think, that's the whole point. Mona made it very eloquently. These are, very minor adjustments in real terms. I mean, we prepare, our clients and the immediate teams for when one of our consultants joins that team. And, it's more about the unwritten rules of the workplace. So, Ty's experience is something that we mirror clearly, because who wants to, anyone who doesn't want to understand where they've got to go, the people they're going to be working with, have some kind of background. But actually, it's almost as important to think about the unwritten rules of the workplace. So, for example, who wants to be thrust onto a call or a meeting at very short notice without an agenda, and it's also using, clear, unambiguous communication. So, what is expected of that person and everyone on that call or that meeting? Are they expected to present, contribute, listen only, or challenge? These are things that, from a social point of view, can be very different based on that organisation, the culture of that organisation, even down to the personalities in that team. And so these are things that actually we see when we've kind of looked back over a 3-month or 6-month period. We find the productivity of that team in general goes up because of the things that we've suggested, because they're things that benefit everybody. And as you say, Carrie, it's not rocket science.
Yeah, I love that. Mona, in running your business, you're also trying to be a mum as well. And in a way, you're a campaigner in a sense that you are doing new things, aren't you, with what you're doing in your business. So how are you managing to do all of that? And what are the priorities for you in terms of your autistic staff?
In fact, when we first started this, I was like, okay, so when he was 12, Ash is my son. So when he was 12, he always said that he wanted to have his own restaurant, call it Harry Specter's. I nicked that name from him, sorry. But it's close enough. And, I just thought, okay, he's happy knowing, because I explained why I was doing this. And I said, look, it means I'm not going to be spending as much time with you as I used to, but it's something that you can join in, your friends can join in, it'll give you guys something to do. And he was like, yeah, all right. And because we started from the back of our house, the conservatory was the packaging area. That's how we started. And he was there, and then his friends would come on the weekends or after school. So he'd meet up with them as well, and they'd have a nice time together, and they'd be packaging chocolates and dipping truffles. So he sort of accepted that, and he'd just pop in, even if I'm working late, because obviously it's a seasonal business. But he was always there. He'd get up in the middle of the night. I'd still be around. He'd come in, help out, go back to sleep. So he sort of grew up with that. And now, I mean, he knows that if I'm in the factory, he calls me like a gazillion times a day. He's moved into supported living just to get him that independence. But he knows where I am at all times. He'll do like video calls, or, you know, he'll just call anytime. He'll call from college. I need help talking to Sammy or whoever his latest crush is. You know, so he knows I'm there for him. So is his dad, because we both run the business. My husband is one of the co-founders. And but the fact is that because he knows this company is for autistic people, it's really done amazing things for his confidence and his self-esteem, because he goes around saying that I have a chocolate company, my mom and dad just help run it. I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, he uses that line mostly with girls. Yeah, I've got a chocolate company. You should come and see it sometime, you know, girls and chocolate, and, you know.
That is the best chat-up line ever.
Yeah, milk snap. But and the learning, because I've also got a daughter. There's a 7-year gap. She's older. And with her, she was like ahead of in everything she did. She was like, she started sitting up before most kids do. And, you know, everything was like super quick with her. And then along came Ash 7 years later, and everything was delayed. So it was like a whole new learning. So the stuff that we've learned with Ash, we would never have done with a neurotypical son. So, I mean, I'm really grateful to him because he's opened our eyes to a totally different world. Because without that, I would not have been able to start something like this, or at least be a good enough boss for my employees like I am now. It's because of the experience I've had with him that I can relate to whatever they say or do and not get annoyed or think what the hell is going on. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
because I can totally understand where they're coming from.
I'm loving this. I'm loving this idea of Ash and having parents that run a chocolate company. I remember when Tylen was younger, and Tylen at one point, when David and I were doing Fame Academy, thought that everybody's mum and dad went out every day and taught people to sing. And I just thought, this is what a great concept of life. That that's what grown-ups do. I love that. Tylen's now just frowning at me like, no, I didn't. But yeah, there was a point.
Remember that.
There was a point when you just thought everyone went out every day and did singing, which is so for Ash, everyone goes out every day and makes chocolate. What a great concept. So what's he doing now? What will he do in terms of his entry into the workplace? If we talk about young people here, he's in his early 20s.
Yeah,
right?
so he's been on. Yeah, he's 23, but he's already had work placements in Pizza Hut and M&S. He's now going to be doing stuff at Premier Inn. So we wanted him to have a varied experience before he came to work for us, because at the end of the day, we are still mom and dad. So we wanted him to get that professionalism in place, that when you're at work, we're not mom and dad, we're your bosses. So to get that distinction going, he had to be placed in different settings, that he understands what the work relationship is, and understanding boundaries and understanding behavior. And the college he goes to is really amazing that way. They've taught him skills and things that he wouldn't have learned if he had just come directly and worked with us, because in the end of the day, it's just mom and dad.
Yeah, I think
it's really important for them to have a varied experience before coming to us.
And just picking up on that, Mona, just that thing of being able to get the experience. What is that like, Steve, for people, some of your autistic personnel that are coming to you and you're wanting to put them into jobs? One of the challenges surely must be that they haven't had those opportunities to even get the experience that will open the door for them into the company. How do you get that going?
So I guess very simply, Carrie, it's through our job coaches. It would be I guess, bordering on irresponsible of us to basically just act as that facilitator to create the employment opportunity without providing that kind of element of support ourselves. So all of our consultants, they're employed by us, so they've got that security, number one. Which removes anxiety in itself. And I think, ultimately having that job coach that can actually go on the journey with them is so important. And actually, we've had people that have come to Auticon and they've left us, but they've gone off into the wider commercial world without necessarily needing that support, which for us is great. And we see that as just such a success story.
So is Auticon one of the ways in which these young people can get experience as well? Because one of the things that is different, is sort of what Mona was saying, is, it's all very well him coming to work for her chocolate company, but he's gone and worked in 3 other companies in order to gain experience. And so many employers will say, you're great on paper, you've got all that stuff working out, but you haven't had any experience. So what can Auticon do anything about the lack of experience sometimes?
So we're certainly getting there. We're still quite modest in terms of our size and scope, but I think fundamentally what we're trying to do, and this is also, from a commercial perspective, because there is a shortage generally of, people in the tech sector with the cybersecurity or the data analysis skills. And so for us, what we're trying to do is to build a skills development program which allows us to actually create that dialogue, with autistic people and their parents, actually, from a position of secondary education or higher education, so that we can actually start to bring people into the business. We can look at their technical capability, but also their cognitive skills as well. And that's really important because, yes, we can put the actual technical training in place, but it's about making sure that we understand and have an understanding of those cognitive skills, such that we can match them with the right employer, the right project, the right team, and actually, give them that supported entry into the workplace, which I think is really important.
So important. The entry into the workplace has got to be one of the most important things, because it's a bit like Tylen was saying, if school has always said this is as good as it gets, and then you do your first job and it's really amazing and it's a really good experience, that sets you up in terms of how you view the adult outside world in a way that, and equally, if your experiences are negative, that's going to make you feel like you're unemployable.
100%. When we have our, it's taken a little bit of time for us to really craft our employment process ourselves, but fundamentally we dispensed with interviews. I know this is something which comes up time and time again, because it is a shop window, and it isn't reflective of a person's skills or their ability to actually do the job. It really is about how well they can articulate in a 30, 45-minute or an hour conversation to convince and build some kind of rapport with that interviewer, which is just not false. That does not paint an accurate picture of how that person will be performing in 6 months' time or a year's time. And so for us, it really is about trying to not delve into the gaps in someone's profile if they have had a bit of work experience, because normally those gaps highlight bad experiences where they haven't been comfortable in the workplace or that role, and they really just don't want to be there, which is humbling in itself. So we really focus on what that individual should be doing and could be doing, as opposed to a snapshot on a piece of A4 paper.
Yeah. So
I totally agree with, what Steve is saying, because we don't do interviews either. It's just a very informal chat. We never advertise a vacancy. So people just come to us initially for work experience, and we work with students for as young as 15 years old. My assistant chocolatier right now started when he was 15 on work experience. He's 19 now, and he basically runs most of the chocolate making. And this is what he wants to do. But the thing is that when they come in, it's just sit around for informal chat. They come with the parents or their teachers or whoever's coming with them at the time. And it's just like, what do you like doing? What are your interests? Why do you want to come to a chocolate company? How are your fine motor skills? Can you do origami? So that's how we assess if they're good at folding boxes. Do you like doing pattern games and following patterns? Can they actually put chocolates according to a pattern? So instead of just asking them something like that, we ask them what sort of interests they are and what they like doing, and then we find out what their strengths are, and then create that position for them.
I
So
love
it's
that.
the
I love the way that
the other
you're.
way around.
Yeah, I love the way that you're using those finding out skills without doing a traditional way of having to do an interview, which is sit down and talk.
I mean, I'd freak out in an interview. Seriously, it's like the most daunting experience of anyone's life, and it basically boils down to how good you are at acting or drama, because that's what you have to do for that half an hour. You have to pretend to be somebody you're not, just to get that job, and then once you get the job, you're like, oh my God, what have I done? And now I still have to pretend, and there's only so much you can pretend. So, and that's where I think there's a major flaw in the interviewing and hiring process, because it doesn't give you a chance to be the person you are.
So let's finish on this. The chance to be the person you are from an autistic point of view. We want our autistic community to feel like they can show up as themselves, be their fabulous selves. In terms of autism awareness then, question to all of you. What do you most want people to know? We're talking about raising awareness of autistic people and who they are, what they bring. I'll start with Steve. Let's go to you first, Steve. So what do you want people to know?
So I think it probably starts with people at an individual level. Holding yourself to a higher standard actually means you want to be open and accepting, and you want to learn about things fundamentally. And that's where it starts. We talk a lot about autism acceptance. I think fundamentally that acceptance has to move to celebration, because that is true integration where everyone is different. And particularly in companies, there is a common conception based on the particular company's style or culture that they hire the same type of person.
Oh yeah.
Well,
hire yourself, and if you hire the same type of people, you're going to get the same type of results. Yeah.
Again, it isn't rocket science. We say it many times, but it's about having that truly diverse team.
Wouldn't it be great to have for leadership at leadership level? If leadership training involved your legacy, not repeating yourself, not making yourself. If that was one of the absolute remits of your legacy as a leader, was to not reproduce yourself.
Absolutely, and I think both Mona and Tylen touched on this by default. It kind of starts with two things: empathy and kindness. And if you kind of start with that basis in terms of holding yourself to that standard without sounding too idealistic, but that's a great position to start from, I think.
Yeah, that desire to see change, the curiosity to learn more. And for you, Mona, what would you say, moving forward, what would you want people to know?
I think, like Steve said, you have to treat everybody as individuals, as people with strengths. And I think if I speak personally, you have to stop being so judgmental and sort of, assessing people according to their own script and according to what you think the world should be like. And when people ask me, what do you think you've achieved the most? What was your highest achievement in all these years? And I just think the fact that I have like 10 autistic people happily working, dancing away, listening to music, getting the job done, I think that would be the most that I've ever achieved or hope to achieve, because I'm doing something right for them to stay and work for me.
Yeah, we applaud you for that. We really, really do. Tylen, any thoughts on what you want people to know about autism or the autistic community or who you are?
I don't remember who said this, but like what you were saying when you said, like, when you meet one autistic person, you meet one autistic person, and just as everyone is different and unique in their own ways, so are we. And that also means that we have something to bring that maybe is outside of like even your imagination. And I feel like you can learn a lot from us. And I think there's definitely like it's definitely important to just be open and kind and understanding that like everyone is different.
I love that, Tylen. Thank you.
Here,
Thank
here.
you to all my guests today, Tylen Grant, Mona Shah and Steve Hill. I feel like I've gone away with an even greater awareness. I hope you have too. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of Autism in Conversation with Auticon. Just to mention, in terms of a community preference language, all episodes in this series were recorded in November 2021. We did our recording and production at the Strathmore Studios in Clerkenwell, London. It was engineered and edited by Billy Godfrey. Music was by the Lethargies. If you'd like to know more about the next show or would like further information about how Auticon can help, please visit www.auticon.co.uk. That's all from us this time. Bye for now.